Nobody plans to end up exhausted. You don't wake up at 22 and think, you know what? I'm going to spend the next 15 years chasing a lifestyle I can barely afford, working for a manager I don't respect, buying things I don't need to impress people I don't particularly like, and wondering every Sunday night why Monday feels like a punishment. Nobody plans that. It just sort of happens, gradually, quietly, one reasonable decision at a time. The slightly nicer apartment because you finally got the promotion, the car upgrade because the old one was getting embarrassing, the wardrobe refresh because the new role required it, the restaurant habits because you deserve it after the week you just had. And then one morning you're 34, earning more than you ever thought you would at this age, and you're checking your bank account at 11 p.m. with the same low-level anxiety you had at 24, when you were making half as much. Something is very wrong with the math. You just can't figure out where. Here's where. And here's the alternative that a small but growing number of people have quietly discovered, one that sounds almost offensively simple until you understand what it actually does to your finances, your stress levels, and ultimately your freedom. There is a race most people don't remember signing up for. It has no finish line, no trophy, no moment where a voice announces that you've won and you can stop running now. It just keeps going, and the track keeps expanding, and the other runners keep upgrading their shoes. And somehow the goal is always just slightly further ahead than wherever you currently are. The rat race isn't a metaphor about capitalism or corporate life specifically. It's a description of a psychological loop. Earn more, want more, spend more, need to earn more to cover the spending, repeat. The loop is self-reinforcing and it accelerates over time. Because human beings are remarkably good at adapting to new comfort levels and remarkably bad at going backwards voluntarily. The conventional solution offered to this problem is always the same. Earn more. Get the raise. Get the promotion. Start the side hustle. More income is the answer to financial stress. And more income does help, temporarily, until the lifestyle expands to absorb it, which it almost always does within 18 months of any significant income increase. Then the stress returns at a higher baseline and the prescription is the same again. Earn more. What almost nobody suggests is the opposite intervention. Not earning more, wanting less. Deliberately, strategically, and with a very clear understanding of exactly what you gain by doing it. That's financial minimalism, and it is one of the most powerful wealth-building strategies that never gets discussed in mainstream financial advice. Let me introduce you to two people who graduated together, got similar jobs, and took completely different paths with their money. First, there's Marcus. Marcus earns $80,000 a year. He lives in a nice apartment, and $1,800 a month. Drives a leased car, $420 a month. Eats out regularly. Travels twice a year, dresses well, has the subscriptions, has the gadgets. His life looks good. His Instagram looks great. He saves about $400 a month when everything goes smoothly, which it usually doesn't. Then there's Nina. Nina also earns $80,000 a year. She lives in a smaller apartment, $1,100 a month. Drives a used car she bought outright 3 years ago. Cooks most of her meals, takes one intentional trip a year, owns less stuff but genuinely uses everything she owns. She invests $2,200 every single month without exception. Same income, completely different financial trajectories. After 10 years, Marcus has roughly $58,000 in savings and investments, assuming reasonable market returns on his sporadic contributions. He also has a lifestyle that now costs $6,000 a month to maintain, meaning he needs his job to keep functioning, exactly as it is or things start breaking down quickly. After 10 years, Nina has approximately $340,000 in invested assets growing at historical market rates. Her lifestyle costs $3,200 a month. She could survive a job loss for nearly 9 years on her current savings without changing how she lives. She has, without being dramatic about it, achieved something close to financial independence before most people have figured out their career direction. The difference wasn't talent, wasn't luck, wasn't even discipline in the painful willpower sense. It was a fundamentally different answer to one question. What is money actually for? Here's the part that most financial advice skips entirely because it sounds too simple to be worth discussing. Every dollar you choose not to spend does two things simultaneously. It stays available to be invested, which is the obvious part. But it also permanently reduces the income You need to be financially free, which is the part most people never calculate. Financial independence, in its simplest form, is reached when your invested assets generate enough returns to cover your living expenses indefinitely. The standard rule of thumb is that you can safely withdraw about 4% of a portfolio annually without depleting it over a 30-year period. So if your lifestyle costs $60,000 a year, you need approximately $1.5 million invested to be financially independent. But if your lifestyle costs $36,000 a year, not because you're suffering, but because you've deliberately stripped it of the things that don't actually make you happy, you only need $900,000. That is a $600,000 difference in the finish line. And it's not just a smaller target. It's a faster journey to that smaller target, because you're also saving and investing more aggressively along the way. Financial minimalism doesn't just help you save faster. It moves the goalposts closer at the same time. It's the only financial strategy that attacks both sides of the equation simultaneously. Now here's the psychological layer, the one that explains why this is so counterintuitive for most people to actually implement even when the math is completely obvious. We live inside a consumption economy that is extraordinarily sophisticated at one specific task: converting your desire for meaning, status, connection, and identity into purchasing decisions. Feeling undervalued at work? New outfit. Feeling anxious about the future? Upgrade something to feel more in control. Feeling like your peers are ahead of you? Buy the thing that signals you're on track too. The product changes. The emotional mechanism is always identical. This is not accidental. Entire industries of psychologists, designers, and marketers collaborate to ensure that the gap between feeling something and buying something is as small and frictionless as possible. One-click purchasing, same-day delivery, buy now, pay later. The infrastructure of modern consumption is engineered to remove every possible pause between impulse and transaction. Financial minimalism is, at its core, the practice of inserting that pause back in deliberately, of asking, before every significant spending decision, whether this purchase is buying genuine life satisfaction or just temporarily filling an emotional gap that will reopen next week, requiring another purchase. Research on what actually drives human happiness, and there is a lot of it, consistently shows that beyond a certain baseline of comfort, more stuff produces dramatically diminishing returns on well-being. What does increase well-being reliably? Autonomy, meaningful relationships, time freedom, and the sense of being in control of your own life direction. Financial minimalism doesn't make you happy by making you poor. It makes you happy by redirecting your resources toward the things that actually produce happiness and away from the things that produce the illusion of it temporarily. 3 starting points, concrete ones. The first is a values audit on your current spending. Not a budget in the traditional sense, a values alignment check. Go through the last 3 months of bank statements and mark each significant expense with one of 2 labels. Either it genuinely produced lasting satisfaction, experiences, or progress towards something that matters to you, or it was a reflex, a habit, a social obligation, or a temporary emotional fix that you barely remember now. Most people who do this exercise honestly find that 30 to 40% of their spending falls into the second category. That percentage, redirected into investments, is often enough to completely transform a financial trajectory. The second is to define your enough number. Sit down and calculate what a genuinely good life actually costs you, not an impressive life, a good one. The rent on a place that feels comfortable, food that you enjoy, experiences that matter to you, reasonable transportation, health care, a buffer for spontaneity. Add it up honestly. For most people, this number is significantly lower than what they're currently spending and significantly lower than what they assume they need to be happy. That number is your financial independence. Target divided by 0.04. That's the portfolio you're building toward. Make it real. Write it down. Suddenly, the finish line has a specific location instead of always being just over the horizon. The third is to run a subtraction experiment. For 1 month, deliberately remove one category of habitual spending and observe what actually happens to your quality of life. Not permanently, just as an experiment. Most people discover one of 2 things. Either they genuinely missed it and it's worth keeping, which is useful information, or they don't miss it nearly as much as they assumed they would, which is even more useful information. Humans are surprisingly adaptable downward when the Reduction is chosen rather than forced, and chosen simplicity feels completely different from deprivation. If this perspective on money and freedom resonates with you, subscribe to Real Veil Studios. We cover the financial decisions, psychological patterns, and wealth-building strategies that actually change outcomes, not just the surface-level tips everyone already knows. Subscribe and bring someone with you who needs to hear this. The rat race has a very specific design flaw that nobody mentions. It is perfectly structured so that the faster you run, the further ahead the finish line moves. More income triggers, more spending triggers, more income needed, and the loop accelerates but never resolves. The race doesn't reward speed. It just gets better at keeping you running. The only winning move is to stop playing by its rules, not by giving up ambition, not by moving to a cabin in the woods and rejecting modern life, but by making one deliberate decision to define what enough actually means for you, in specific, honest, personal terms, and then building your financial life around that. Definition rather than around an endlessly expanding standard set by comparison to people. You barely know. Nina didn't win by earning more than Marcus. She won by needing less than Marcus. Those are completely different games, and only one of them has a finish line. Financial minimalism isn't about being small. It's about being precise, knowing exactly what you're building toward, removing everything that doesn't contribute to it, and moving toward freedom with the kind of focused momentum that only becomes possible once you stop running in every direction at once. The race is still out there, loud, crowded, and absolutely exhausting. You don't have to be in it.